welcome to the Learning and Development Podcast, sponsored by Infopro Learning. As always, I'm your host, Nolan Hout. Joining me today, we have Craig Lutz. Craig and I go way back. We first met when he was presenting an award-winning program from Chief Learning Officer. It was about 6 or 7 years ago. Craig has really done it all. In over 20 years in learning development, from instructional designer, done some LMS admin work, now a senior director at Gannett, which is the company responsible for USA Today that probably is a more of a known name. I happened to sync up with Craig recently, and I was hearing about all the work that he was doing in AI, and I thought, well, I got to have him on the podcast now, which is exactly where we are today. Today, we're going to talk all things AI, security, ethics, tools, results. List goes on and on. Lots to cover today, so let's go ahead and meet our guest, Craig. Craig, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, Nolan, thank you so much for the invitation, and happy to be here, and certainly excited that we were able to reconnect again more recently, given kind of where our focus is, and just good to talk about this subject. I think it's on a lot of people's minds, and a lot of people are continuing to learn and upskill at all levels, and so in many ways we're kind of all learning from each other.
Yeah, and I have to say to my listeners that don't know Craig, the award that I'm just now kind of putting this together, the program that Craig was talking about was building a lot of automation and making the onboarding experience more asynchronous at USA Today and Gannett. And if I recall right, you saved over 300,000 a year in training costs for that program. So this is like nothing new for Craig of being on the cutting edge, automation, finding more smoother ways to work. So excited to get going here. Before we do get into the topic of AI, Craig, I always like to start by just learning a little bit more about how did you get to where you are today? I mentioned earlier, now you're the senior director at Gannett, but you didn't start there. So tell us a little bit about your origin story.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. It started out, got out of college. I went to Penn State University, so I'm a Nittany Lion alum, and let's go PSU.
Yeah.
Had to get that in there. Football season's just around the corner.
Hey, you're now of course now that we're recording, I forget his name. Michael Parsons, is he
Yes.
a Lion? Yeah, so I'm
Yeah.
a Cowboy fan, and so he just said that he doesn't want to be with the Cowboys anymore. So
Ah,
probably good for him, to be honest with you. It's probably a good career move.
yeah, I heard there's not a lot of touchdowns there in Dallas anymore, but anyway. But out of college, I went to Penn State. Knew that I was very interested in technology, and of course, back in the early 2000s, technology was definitely a track that folks were considering or wanting to be on. And a lot has transpired since then, especially in the world of technology. And back then, AI was a thing. I know some people feel like AI just started to come on the scene, but AI has been around for a long time. Generative AI is really kind of what took off a few years ago with ChatGPT and some other tools that were out there. But yeah, I started in technology. I worked for Network Solutions, which is the original domain registrar, and they were getting into websites and SEO. When that was really starting to break in and moving into that digital advertising, digital storefront type space. And when I was there, I started to work a little bit with the learning and development team and onboarding training. And a spot opened up, and I had an opportunity come to me, ask me if I would join that team. And really, the rest is history. And so, you mentioned earlier, I've kind of done it all in L&D. I've done a lot of the roles in L&D, from just an instructor to an instructional designer to a learning technologist, to managing learning teams, learning strategy, analytics, you name it. I've probably wore the L&D hat over the years.
Well, lovely. And I think I was talking to somebody this morning about AI, and they're like, somebody on their team had referred to, they're like, I am the CEO of my AI bots. And I have bots that are like my employees that do all these different things. And so I do think, as we start to dig into AI, that's always kind of my big caveat is listen, the more you know, the better you are. But if you don't know, AI can kind of exacerbate some of those things, which I'm sure we'll talk about. So getting into that, Craig, or I guess I should say a question before that. So understand that, the tech domain, the tech background. What is it that you think drew you to the learning and development field?
Well, I really like to help other people, and
Okay.
I've been helped a lot along the way, and I've had investments made in my life, and I really saw L&D as a way to help other people. Back when I first started, it was about folks that were, starting in a new organization. They were, not just needing a job, but looking for a career. Maybe they were right out of college. Maybe they were looking for a career change. And I get to spend the first 3 to 5 weeks with them and really, kind of investing into them, my knowledge,
Yeah.
and kind of creating a way forward for them to not just have a job, but to begin a career. And out of those roles, I could go back through and think about people that I've trained, and they are now in senior leadership. I know one
Wow.
person's a CEO of an organization, and just knowing that I had a part in the early part of their career and developing them, and in some way helping them down that path. I really get a lot of value out of that. So.
Well, that's the best answer to that question I've heard. So that's pretty darn cool. So getting to the topic which everyone came to hear about is AI. We're going to cover everything, but a good place to start is kind of at a very macro level view of like security, kind of ethics, that component, and I'll do a little bit of a caveat. We work Infopro learning, and so therefore I end up speaking mostly to people in large orgs. I'm heavily regulated, I'm this and Craig as well, right? Craig works for Gannett, obviously a very large organization. So definitely, I'm sure there were roadblocks, security roadblocks, ethics roadblocks, compliance. Talk us through a little bit about how you got started, how you kind of navigated some of those waters, and maybe like a good starting point.
Yeah, well, I think a good starting point is, I can remember kind of very clearly, we have these moments in life where things happen and you can remember, right where you were when they took place, right? And I remember where I was the day that I really kind of said to myself, I really need to dig into AI. Now is the time. Many people might wait. They might try to see, does this really turn out to be what we think it's going to be? And it was at that very point that I just started to dig in. And of course, being in the field of L&D, there's a lot of things in life. I was a self-starter. I just started reading, and I just started trying different things, downloading tools, looking for, champions that were on LinkedIn or out there on the web that were trying things and just trying to apply it to my world. And that's really the starting point. And at that point, you don't really think a whole lot about, the impacts or, governance and security, and all those important things that really do need to be part of any AI strategy, whether it's a organizational strategy or as part just in L&D and L&D strategy. And so I had the opportunity to be a part of our AI council, and work with folks just as we got moving as an organization, and a lot of those things were addressed, right? And the company knew that we needed to institute governance. We wanted to focus on the safe and ethical use of AI, and just talk about things like when you're dealing with company information, it's important where you put and don't put that information and where you interact with that. And so when you think about a lot of these tools, AI tools that are out there, understanding, when you put data into those tools, like how is that data being used, and where is that data being stored, and where is it going? When you think about the very entry level, you just download a tool and you start working with it. You're just learning, but then you begin to think about, like, it's not just good enough how I'm using it and what I'm getting out of it and the quality of what I'm getting out of it, but what's the environment and what are the impacts of me using that tool? So definitely, having that, and also from a cultural standpoint, right? I mean,
Yeah.
The human in the loop, and I know that's a phrase that gets used a ton in this environment today, but it really is important to ensure that you have that human aspect, that oversight, that the ability to think critically about the outputs and the responses and the information that you're getting out of AI, and asking yourself, does that even make sense?
Yeah.
Because as we
Yeah.
know, these tools can hallucinate, and I always like to say it this way, just like people, oftentimes our nature, like we want to have the answer. We don't ever want to kind of be there and say, gee, I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, maybe.
I kind of think the AI tools work that way too. They don't want to come back too much and too often. They will, but they don't want to say I don't know. And so sometimes they'll just make it up, and you'll look at that and you'll question it. And so, even making sure that you're sourcing that information that's coming out of that tool, fact checking it, and just ensuring for accuracy. Ultimately, that has a lot of benefits, but it will help build trust in a world where sometimes people aren't too sure about this AI journey that we're on.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think one of the big things when I started seeing hallucinations pop up, and for those that don't know, so a hallucination is when you ask, Claude or whoever, Copilot, whatever you want, you say, I want to know what the typical onboarding time is for a publishing, a salesperson in publishing. It is going to very emphatically come back to you and tell you it's going to be 45 days. A typical company is 45 days. If you ask it, can you cite that source for me? Help me understand where that came from. It's going to say, actually, you caught me. I don't have a source. I was pulling from lots of different sources.
Right.
Let me actually try to answer that again and give you some more links that you can go in and explore. I just did this with a buddy of mine. He was wanting to know whether his ad copy was good or something like that. And I'm not in his industry. And he's like, hey, is 3% good? And I looked and I was like, oh, it actually sucks. And I was like, you know what? This number doesn't look right. Like there's something wrong about it. So yeah, so a hallucination is when the tool, like the tool is like a golden retriever. It just wants to please you.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's going to please you. You got to, again, and that's where, not to say don't let it stop you from doing it. It's just think of it as like almost an early kind of Wikipedia day, right? When your professors were like, hey, you don't submit a paper using Wikipedia as your reference. Broad level, great. Like take that answer, use it. If you're looking for really specifics, the beauty of it is that you can actually ask it if it is lying and it will tell you. So if you ever want to make sure, say, hey, do not make up any number. I only want a number you have. So anyway, very good on kind of the front end. When you talked a little bit though, Craig, that you're on, I think you said like the AI Council at Gannett,
Yep.
is that right?
Yep, that's correct.
So what does that entail? Like what are the kinds of things that that Gannett is addressing at kind of a large scale across? Is it mostly just like, hey, don't use hallucinations, or is it more like security risk?
Yeah, it's a number of different things. Certainly, security is an important part. We've got different roles within that council. Everything from tools and technology. So, what tools and tech, are we going to use? What's approved to be used? Looking at that from both a legal impact, a security impact. The impact to the quality of the tools, right, that we're using. And also, it's a way to make sure that, as folks come up with ideas, which we very much encourage, and they're testing different things out, that we've got kind of a formal strategy to have a review process.
That's
Which
great.
all of our AI initiatives are run through, where you can have representation from different parts of the organization that need to have input and review, to be able to review that. And so folks will come and they'll present what they're looking to do. It's an opportunity for groups across the organization to ask questions, clarifying questions, and then kind of approve that to continue on.
Yeah, I like that. I like that idea of having a process for if it is something related to AI, whatever it is, you have some place to go through. Like the process. It's not just a no, right? Or let's see. So that's really nice that you have kind of taken that time. And you mentioned tools, and I think this is literally just got off with someone in a large IT org, so like tech people as well, and she was saying, we've been trying to buy Synthesia for 3 months. We just can't kind of get it past the line there.
Yeah.
and she's like, and this is the age old problem. She's like, by the time it gets approved, I want to switch to Colossian, and so which tools do I use? So
Yeah.
talk a little bit, Craig, about this kind of predicament of, especially, because most of the people listening to this are, working in larger companies, regulated industries, things like that. How do you choose in a flooded market of tools when there's so many to choose from? And maybe the acquisition process of the tools isn't the easiest. How do you like just prevent yourself from 3 months with this tool, 3 months with this tool, like chasing all these shiny things?
Yeah, and that, I think that's not new to tools and
True.
technology. It's
Yeah,
not
true.
new to tools and technology within L&D. When you
Yep.
think about the traditional LMS, right? And we could say the same thing about LMSs, right?
Hmm.
I get one today, but there's a whole lot of them out there, and then I see that this tool does this, and I'd like it to do that. And how do you keep jumping from one to the next? And really, it's not that much different when you think about the approach. Of course, with the AI lens, there's additional scrutiny and focus just because of the content and how that's being handled. But really, what I've always believed in is whether it's an AI tool or it's any L&D tool or any technology for that matter, is that a good place to start is to kind of define and document what are my requirements for this type of a tool, right? So
Hmm. Yeah.
if I'm gonna choose an LMS or I'm looking for an AI video production tool, like what is it that I need that tool to do, right? And understanding kind of the guidance and the governance that we have around AI within our organization, making sure that that's included in the requirements. You say, well, what do you mean by that? Well, for example, right, if we're going to be interacting with content within a tool, what we don't really want or we don't want is then, that tool taking our information to train back the
The
larger,
model.
right? We need that safe space, if you will, where we can work and we don't have to worry about that information going outside of that bubble for the most part. And so that's just kind of one example where you may have requirements that are related more to video production, but now you're layering in those requirements that impact or that AI will have an impact for. And then
Yeah.
you have some metrics, right? I mean, if we're going to use an AI video tool, right, part of the reason we want to do that is to generate efficiency. Well, what kind of efficiency are we looking to generate? Based on our current workload and resources that are available. Do we want to be able to produce 50 videos, 50% more efficiently, 90% fast? Like what is that metric? And can
Right.
can that vendor prove that they're able to meet that metric?
Yeah, it's interesting, Craig. Well, you said something in it. I immediately was like, yeah, yeah, yeah. Like, you don't buy, um, the tool doesn't decide what features you use. You decide which features
Right.
you use, and then you find the tool that matches those, which is true. But I do think that we are at a time where you don't know what you need with AI sometimes, right? It's like impossible. Like with Colossian really, I would have never thought I need the ability to take a PowerPoint slide and turn it into a video using an avatar of our CEO.
Mhm.
I would have never even known that use case existed. So I think, like, I find myself doing this though, so that is what attracts me in, is I'm like, oh, well, I want to know, like, what are these use cases? So I think it's a little bit, versus an LMS, which is such a consolidated marketplace. They basically are all doing the same thing, and you should know what they do at this point. Um, but it comes back to, like, what is the value of this thing? It's cool to chase a shiny idea, right?
Yep.
Like, oh, cool, it converts PowerPoints into thing. Great. What is the value that brings back to my company then? And so this is something that I recently just did, is I was like, well, I want an AI tool that can write better emails in marketing. Like, I
Mhm.
do. And I want to be able to actually personalize every single individual email, one off. And I found it through a tool. Like, there was a tool that marketed me, they say, I'll send you a free Yeti cooler if you take a demo of this tool. I was like, summer's coming. I need a Yeti. Why not? And so the idea came, okay, personalization at scale, AI writing, great. But then I went I cracked the nut open and I was like, okay, now let me go find all the tools that do this and let me put some metrics down. So it is a little bit like the LMS space where you definitely cannot let the what does they call it, like the tail wag the dog. You
Right.
cannot let that
Exactly.
happen. But sometimes I have found, at least in this space, just getting demos of tools is good just to kind of expand your horizons. So, and I'll ask you this question, Quay. You can not answer if you don't want, but would you mind sharing what tools you are using? I think everybody's always interested in what are the tools that are actually the professionals out there leveraging. How do they like them? What do you find yourself using over there?
Yeah. So in relation to AI, I assume you're looking at.
Yeah, yeah, sir.
Well, so for video production, we are using Synthesia. And one thing I will say about, some of the comments that you made are, part or a large part of our approach, especially with AI right now, is piloting tools, right? So
Yeah,
where we can
yeah,
work with an organization, to your point, we may not know everything. We don't know what we don't know. And sometimes AI can help us figure out what all the possibilities, or at least directionally, help us with what
yeah.
use cases are around these types of tools in general. We often will do pilots, and we'll do maybe a 3 month pilot or a 6 month
Good
pilot,
point.
right?
Really
and
good point.
and just dip our toe in the water a little bit. Let's see how that works before we make a longer term commitment. And then with the fact that the industry is moving so fast, and new tools are popping up, left and right all over the place, is not necessarily, making those long-term commitments when we do engage, but maybe shorter-term commitments that will allow us to pivot more quickly than if you get into a 3 or 5 year agreement with a particular tool.
Yeah, really,
Some
really good
vendors don't
point.
want me out there saying that, but
Yeah, no, no. I mean, I think
in this space, right? Like you
yeah.
want to tread carefully, if you will.
So something that I do as default, and this is now turning into how to buy AI, podcast. I say like, listen, I'm not going to sign anything more than 6 months, 3 months if I can. Depending on the tool, you can get away with that. If they're bigger, usually they'll force a year. But I say I refuse to do an opt out. I
Yeah,
will do only an opt-in. So like a lot of pilots are 1 month and then you automatically roll into your next one, or they're 3 months and then you automatically roll in.
yeah,
So this leads me to do two things. Like either if it's a larger purchase that requires a PO and things like that, I don't. It's either in the contract that it's an opt out or an opt in, sorry, or the second I sign the contract, I also send a cancellation notice.
yeah.
I said, listen, my intent is to cancel at the end of 3 months, just so you know, because a lot of times, you got to let me know 30 days in advance, 60 days. And I
Right.
say, now it's on you. And it's amazing how that kind of flips the script in their mind of, okay, this person has chose not to go with us unless we can prove that they are willing to go with us. So like, it's a really, one, it makes sure you don't spend money when you don't need to. And two, it kind of puts the vendor. And then the other thing, which I'm sure many of you must know, if you're buying just like a DIY tool, like a Synthesia, I think Colossian probably has one as well, like a trial program. I bought Gemini for a 2 weeks because I wanted to see if I could produce a video, kind of like what I was seeing. I couldn't. I wasn't nearly good enough to do so,
Yeah.
or at least I didn't love the video that it came out with. But I paid for a month of a year, and then I just canceled it immediately. But I still get to use it for that month, so that's another good thing. The second you sign up, go and cancel. They're still going to give it to you for that time, but you don't have to worry about auto renewals. So that's
And
that's a lot.
most
A
that
lot.
I've talked to, Nolan, right? I just believe in being upfront. Like, this is where
Yeah,
we're at. This is what we're looking to do. Of course, we're treading cautiously because the
yeah,
proof really is in the pudding. And, I see where, this could produce what you're saying, but we really need to
yeah. See it.
actualize that it
Yeah,
will produce, what the intention is there. And so we kind of lay all that out. And to your point, we'll make sure that there's certain things in the contract.
yeah,
We've got a legal team that will review that and be that, resource and guide. But if you don't have access to that, you definitely want to, make sure you read the contract, or even negotiate those things up front, right? And I know
Yes.
a lot of these online tools. It's like, hey, I'm going to go out, I'm going to put in my email, I'm going to click the terms of agreement. You never read the terms of agreement, and you're really not sure what you just signed up for, right?
Yeah.
And so it is important to, as much as you can, negotiate those terms up front.
Totally. So
And there's a lot of tools out there, right? So I always look at it this way: someone's willing to play.
yeah, 100%, 100%. So you mentioned you're using Synthesia.
Yep,
I think I heard. Are you also using like a Gen AI tool, like
we are.
a version of Copilot or something
Yeah,
like that?
and that's our primary tool. Gen AI tool across the board is
Okay.
Microsoft Copilot. We do use M365 Copilot, so that's integrated. You have Copilot Chat, but then you have
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
work and the web, so it's integrated into your Microsoft Graph and all of the your Teams messages, your emails, your documents that are on OneDrive. It'll be able to reference those, and you'll be able to prompt referencing those types of things. And so we use that a lot, even in the L&D world. One use case that seems very simple, but it has been very helpful to us. And I think everyone, that's listening to this podcast and is in L&D or an instructional designer understands working with stakeholders. And
Yeah.
oftentimes they'll come, with a need, and you'll do a proper needs analysis. At some point in that process, you need that stakeholder to provide you with an outline or, something. And that's typically where, if it's going to get hung up, that's the first place it gets
Yeah.
hung up. You're waiting on that stakeholder to get you everything, because they may or may not even have it documented. And so, what we have found is that we can speed up that process by, taking the information that we've gotten from the needs analysis and prompting Copilot and referencing that needs analysis or key parts of that information to come up with an outline of what the training program looks like. And then we're able to, take that. Of course, there's human in the loop, so we're reviewing that for accuracy. We're making sure it didn't hallucinate and make things up because it didn't have information to
Yeah.
reference properly. So we may make some tweaks then to that, but there's an efficiency gained just in that by itself. But then we're able to take that and put that in front of the stakeholder. And instead of them having to start maybe with a blank slate and a blinking cursor, now they're able to react to something. And we have found that when we can do that and they're able to react to something, I mean, we just get turnaround much quicker.
Yeah.
For a number of reasons. Oh, no, that's not right. We need to, or okay, I'm not starting from ground zero. Now I can, I feel like I can get this done in a reasonable amount of time.
Yeah. A lot of it. What is you might know the name of it. I don't know it. What is the principle where it says if nobody is answering a question, give them the wrong answer, and then
Yeah.
they're much faster to answer that way.
Right.
Like, so if you just ask, what's the square root of 31, or well, let's do one I can actually think of. What is square root of, like, what, 81 be 9? I guess, I don't know. I probably haven't done roots in forever, but
Either.
if I said 12,
Right.
somebody would immediately say no, it's 9. But if I were just to ask, not a single person would answer. And so I think I love that use case. It's one that I demo. I think I might have demoed it to you recently as well. Like, I demo that all the time. As I say, listen, you can't imagine how much time it saves giving a SME a document that says, "Is this good?" versus, like, would you call it blinking cursor? I've never, just
Right.
versus just like
There
sitting
you
on a
go.
blinking cursor.
Cursor.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Right.
yeah. Tell me what I need to know, and they're
Yep.
like, well, okay, like, what do you need to know to train people? I don't. So yes, 100%. And that is the number one call to action that I always give people is, listen, more than likely your company has some Gen AI tool. They have Claude, they have Copilot, they have Gemini, they have ChatGPT. Load in your reference documents, say, create a course outline for me, show that to your SME. You will save yourself countless hours of just back and forth and waiting on people. How do you like Copilot, by the way? So I used Copilot right when it came out, and I absolutely hated it. I was like, this can't do anything for me. And I honestly never looked back because I just went so deep into Claude, and it's got all my stuff. Once you kind of get in a platform, you have so much knowledge in there. Are you liking Copilot?
I mean, personally, I do. I
Okay.
think
Yeah.
again, it goes to to any tool that's out there, right? There's pros and cons, pluses,
Yeah.
minuses. People have their favorites. They like them for
Yeah.
different things. And oftentimes it's dependent on, what they're primarily
Yeah.
using the tool for their role. What I do like about Microsoft Copilot a lot is that integration into my
Totally.
emails and my Teams chats and my documents. And, instead of having to take a document and upload it into the
Yeah.
chat,
It's
like I can
annoying.
just be prompting, I can slash, I can reference, pull that document in, and it's all contained. So from that perspective, it's more seamless, right? And for those reasons and that integration, I think is personally why I find it very helpful.
Yeah, yeah, maybe I should give it again. I haven't used it in 2 years. I just got so deep into Claude and but it is a
Yeah.
hassle. There's no denying like the load it into this document, reach it into this. It's so annoying. So I'm happy to hear that it's kind of made those strides and orgs are using it. So that's a
But
good shout
I'm a
out.
curious person though, so I will say, explore, right?
Yeah,
Depending
true.
on what you're
Yeah.
doing, sometimes you'll find, maybe a different one's better at analytics, right? Or, it's getting to the point where with a number of these tools, right, that you really need to define,
Yeah.
okay, this tool does these types of
It's
things.
really well. Yeah.
This tool does these types of things really well. And so as you're thinking about your tech stack when it comes to AI and
Hmm.
what tools that are needed, I think it'd be hard pressed to say that, if you don't have any, like one will be great.
Yeah.
But once you get one and then you start exploring with another, I think where things are going is that it's going to be a multitude even of these Gen AI tools like the
Yes.
Copilots and the Claudes and the Chat GPTs, that it's going to be a combination of those that's going to be
Totally.
of real value as people learn, which ones are really good at
Yeah,
different.
suitable for each one. Yeah, I mean
Exactly.
that's why I bought Gemini. Is I was like I wanted to do video and I couldn't in Claude, and I was like, oh well, I heard Gemini Pro. So yeah, you're right. I think that's absolutely where it's going to go. But so we talked about purchasing,
Yeah.
these tools. The one thing we didn't really talk about though is so we've made investments. You've obviously made investments, personally in your time, but then also,
Yeah.
it sounds like you've purchased and acquired some tools. What are you doing to measure the impact of those?
Yeah, and I'll be honest with you, we're still working through all that, right? I mean,
Yeah.
this is an evolution, and when you think about learning, and we talk about this a lot, well, what's the success of learning? Is it that someone went to one of the training programs and
Mm,
they took what they learned and they applied it and they were able to apply it successfully, like they were able to
right.
complete the task or the tasks or whatever. But then you look at, okay, by doing that and building the skill ability across many different tasks or scenarios, what are the things, what are the advantages of doing that? And one, is time saving, right? It's efficiency. This is where a lot of people start getting concerned. They're saying, "Oh, AI is coming for my job," and I'm sure you've heard it. And I think the reality is there will be jobs that will change, and so some will go away. New ones will be created. That's not anything new just because of AI. That's happened over the course of
Yeah.
history with technological advancements. But as we look at efficiencies gained, we're asking the question. It's like, okay, so if folks are saving X amount of time, what can they now do with that time? Some groups may have a backlog of work that they're now able to get to quicker because they were able to save time even on basic tasks, summarizing meetings, drafting emails, coming up with outlines, like nothing that's really earth shattering. With a little bit of practice, you can be effective at. So there's that aspect of it. And then you also, and there's a lot to discuss here. I'm just kind of tiptoeing through some,
Yeah.
but when it comes to a leader and a manager of people, right? At that level, understanding how my team is using AI, having conversations with them about where it's working, where they're gaining efficiencies, and then talking about, well, what's the future now look like, right? Like what is work that you can now focus on that you couldn't before because you did have a lot of administrative work that was going on in your role, right? And it was the kind of stuff that was keeping the train on the tracks. It had to be done. It couldn't be ignored. But now what can we do, with our curiosity, and what can we do with time to experiment and explore? And how can that move, the individual, the team, the department, the organization forward because of those benefits of AI that have come our way. And so looking at how we measure that, looking for ways for accountability, right? So, once you reach that point where, people are starting to get educated, they're buying in at a greater level, what are the metrics that we are going to put in place, right, for accountability that will then drive deeper and deeper engagement with AI learning programs and AI upskilling and ultimately AI utilization, right? So, to say we're doing this, we're doing this, we're doing this, we're in the process of doing that right now and figuring that out. And I'm sure there's a lot out there that are. Learning is an important component. I think it's just one piece of the puzzle, though, of successfully, moving into this, continuing to move into this AI world.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you were to kind of contrast it to kind of whatever Kirkpatrick's 4 levels of and knowledge consumption, it's almost like I feel like AI is kind of starting with the fourth of like making the business impact, right? Like, okay, I used to be able to do 40, now can I do, well, I guess if we start it the other way, like what is level one? Like
Right.
basic, what is the equivalent of the smiley sheet? It's like, well, were you able to leverage AI to produce an asset faster? And I think that number one is like the almost like the table stakes of like, can
Yes.
I do it? This job that took me 8 hours, can I get it done in one? Okay, cool. And if that is the case, then you should invest. Even if you don't really know what you're going to use the other 7 hours for, you
Right.
ought to take the advantage of that cost saving. I think so. Then, okay, level two. Well, maybe level two comes in then. Okay, well, um, what are we going to do with this extra time, and how much of it are we going to save versus how much are we going to reinvest, right? So are we going to shrink our budget, or are we going to keep our budget the same and just do a lot more of these things? We're going to make an e-learning with every, or a video with every e-learning. Every course is going to be translated in 10 different languages, whatever it is. And then you get back to, 3 and 4 kind of stay the same, right? Three is like, well, what was the impact on the job? Or did we help people learn faster? And I think, and then 4 is, did they perform and what were the business results? But I think we almost it's one of those things that I feel we can overthink ourselves out of the discussion to do number one. Like we are like, well, we can't define 4, so let's not even start at 1.
What's the point of one? What's the point
It,
of gaining efficiency if we can't really measure that efficiency?
right, right. And I think
Yeah.
we're in such an early field that I feel, and the efficiencies are so high, right? It's like such an efficiency gain that I feel like we're better off saying, listen, I know it took me X amount. If it can take me an eighth of that, I'm gonna buy the tool and figure out what the efficiencies are down the road. And unfortunately, like I feel like this is already coming down the pipe. Like I can see how it's working in my company and others, right? Like when email came out, people thought, oh my gosh, think of how much time and money I'm going to have. Not, with all these stupid stamps and going to the post office and
Right.
writing think of how much time I'll have.
And now we're
That's not,
beyond email. We're in chat
yeah,
messages and
and that's not what happened. And
right.
then, and now I get an email, I get 1,000 letters written to me a
Yep.
day.
Yep.
Some are short, some are long. So now it didn't make my life easier, it made my life harder because now anybody can send me a message at any point in time and I'm expected to return back as soon as they are. I'm
Yep.
sure we'll get there. So what
Right.
I'm saying is right now, enjoy the heyday
Yes.
of not everybody's using it. You're in a position to be 8 to 9 times faster than the others that are still writing hand letters and mailing them. You are the equivalent of emailing people. Make some hay while the sun is shining.
Exactly. Right. Because that's just for now. Eventually, history has shown us that more will get on board, right? And whether they were wanting to do it at the start or not. But, yeah, I would say my advice to folks is just ask yourself as you're going throughout your day. I say Copilot. It's a primary tool we use. Whatever AI tool you're using, how can the AI, I'll put it that way in general, help me? Can
Yeah.
the AI help me? And if you don't know, what I found that if you go to the AI and ask how it can help,
Yes,
it can help you start getting ideas about, oh, wait a minute,
it
maybe this
can.
actually can help me, right? Because that's another barrier is people say, well, I think maybe it can, but I don't know how to go about it. Use the AI to help you down the road of not knowing about it. Now you're using it as a learning tool as well.
Yeah, and that's why I said, going back to, you can just ask it, are you lying to me? Like, are these like, it's a wild time to be in. Like, you can never, there was nothing, I can't even equate it to anything close to that. So, well, thanks, Craig, for your time. I know we kept you a little bit longer. We had some tech issues at the beginning,
Yeah.
but thanks for bearing with it. This has been a phenomenal podcast on all things AI. Craig is on LinkedIn as well. You want to ever sync up with Craig, he can talk to you about kind of what he's done, either on the council that he's at with Gannett or just in the real world, application. Again, he is one of those guys who knows hands-on what to do, but also think very, very strategically at the top. So he's a wonderful resource for you, and I'm sure he'd love to kind of connect and share his stories.
Yeah, absolutely. Nolan, thanks so much. I was enjoyed being here, enjoyed chatting with you. Look forward to continuing chatting with you in the future about this topic, as I'm sure we will be for a good while into the future.
Sounds good. Thanks, Craig. Enjoy
All
your
right,
day.
take care. All right, bye
Bye.
bye.